Welcome to Twilight Fables, where dreams blur into nightmares and fairy tales remember the things we try to forget. Alice woke to the sound of ticking, not the crisp tick of a clock on a wall, but 1,000 small ticks, soft and erratic, like raindrops against glass. When she opened her eyes, the world above her shimmered, a pale sky the colour of porcelain, threaded with silver clouds that didn't move. She lay on her back in a meadow, except it wasn't quite a meadow. The grass was too bright, too even, each blade standing upright, as if carved from glass. When she brushed her hand across it, it rang faintly, chiming like thin metal. She sat up, startled, and then noticed the flowers. They were clocks, each one bloomed with a delicate watch face where petals should be, their hands spinning lazily, some forward, some backward. A few ticked in frantic rhythm, others not at all. The air smelled faintly of something she couldn't name, sweet, but also sharp, sterile, like the inside of a bottle recently uncorked. Alice pressed a hand to her temple. "What is this?" she whispered. Her voice sounded strange, as though it didn't belong to her. A shadow flickered at the edge of her vision. Something darted through the glassy grass, quick, pale, nervous. She caught a glimpse of white fur and red eyes before it vanished behind a tree that seemed to hum faintly. "Wait," she called, scrambling to her feet. When she reached the tree, the creature was already standing there, not an animal, but a man, thin and twitching, with white hair that tufted around his ears and eyes too wide for his face. His coat was long and white, buttoned tight, though the sleeves were rolled up and stained faintly at the cuffs. A chain hung from his pocket, not a watch, but a ring of small silver keys. "You're late," he said, voice clipped and breathless. "They're waiting." Alice blinked. "Who's waiting?" He looked at her as though she'd just asked how to breathe. "The appointment, of course. Don't tell me you've forgotten already." Her heart fluttered. "Forgotten, I dash." He didn't let her finish. His hand shot out, thin fingers grasping her wrist. His skin was ice cold. "No time for questions," he muttered. "Time's gone all wrong again." He tugged her along before she could resist, pulling her through the meadow. The ticking flowers bent away from their steps. Somewhere in the distance, she thought she heard laughter, high and brittle, like glass breaking. They came to a gate. It was tall, made of black iron twisted into shapes of roses and spirals. A single sign hung from the arch: "Wonderland, visitors by appointment only." The rabbit, for she could think of no other name for him, fumbled with his keys and unlocked it. As Alice stepped through, the world shifted. The meadow behind her blurred like wet paint. Ahead, a narrow path coiled through a forest where the trees leaned close, whispering. Their bark gleamed faintly under under a dim sun, silver grey, with faint veins of crimson beneath. She shivered. Where are we going? To see the Hatter, of course. The rabbit's voice was thin and distracted. He'll fix it. He always fixes it. What does he fix? He looked at her then, eyes like two small wounds. Everything that's broken. The path wound downward until the trees opened into a clearing. There stood a long table covered in mismatched cups, saucers and teapots. Steam rose in twisting tendrils, carrying a strange scent, floral, but tinged with something chemical. A figure sat at the head, his hat enormous and crooked, his coat threadbare and stained with tea. He looked up and smiled. Ah, the guest of honour. Alice hesitated. I don't think I was invited. The Hatter laughed, a sound both joyous and exhausted. Everyone's invited. Not everyone arrives. He gestured for her to sit. The rabbit vanished without another word, scuttling into the shadows. Alice took a seat at the far end, eyeing the chipped porcelain cup placed before her. The tea inside was pale and murky, swirling like smoke trapped in liquid. What's in it? She asked. The Hatter's smile didn't reach his eyes. Memory, mostly. Sugar, if you're lucky. She hesitated, then lifted the cup. It smelled faintly of lavender and something sharper underneath, like the sting of alcohol on a wound. When she took a cautious sip, warmth flooded her tongue, then her head. The world seemed to slow. The ticking in the distance dimmed. Her limbs felt heavier. That's better, the Hatter said softly. It helps, doesn't it? Makes the noise stop. What noise? She murmured. He tilted his head. You'll remember soon enough. You always do. Time passed strangely. Conversations looped. The same questions repeated. How long have you been here? Do you know your name? Do you remember what happened? Each time Alice would answer, and each time the Hatter would shake his head, disappointed, as if she'd gotten it wrong. When she looked around, the tea party seemed to stretch endlessly. The same teapots and spoons repeated down the table, like a reflection in a mirror. Beyond that, fog. Beyond the fog, shapes that looked like doorways, but dissolved if she focused too long. Once, she thought she saw a girl sitting across from her, grinning wide, her body fading in and out like a mirage. Cheshire, said the Hatter, always vanishing when she's needed. The girl winked and whispered, You shouldn't drink too much, Alice. It makes you forget. Then she was gone. When Alice woke again, she was lying beneath the table. The cups were gone, the Hatter too. The only sound was that same soft ticking, now much closer. A single rhythmic pulse, like a heartbeat through the ground. She crawled out, blinking in the dim light. The forest had changed. The trees were thinner now, the air colder. A faint hum filled the air, mechanical, constant, almost like a ventilation system. She frowned. What's a ventilation system? The word came unbidden, foreign and familiar at once. Her stomach turned. She stumbled through the clearing, trying to find the rabbit, But every path curved back on itself. The trees leaned closer each time. Their whispers grew louder. She caught fragments. Late again, treatment, obedience, order. Then she heard humming, a woman's voice, soft, patient, sweetly cruel. Alice, Alice, always late, never learning. Alice froze. The voice came from beyond a veil of white petals. When she pushed through them, she found herself in a circular garden made entirely of roses, each one bright white, with faint red veins running through the petals, like capillaries. At the centre of the garden stood a woman, tall, regal. Her gown shimmered white, with crimson trim, like silk dipped in blood. Her hair was pulled into a severe bun, and her eyes were calm and pitiless. She turned to Alice and smiled. "My little wanderer," she said, "I warned you not to leave your room." Alice blinked. "Room? I don't..." The woman stepped closer, and for a fleeting moment, the scent of antiseptic filled the air again. "Never mind," the woman said gently. "We'll correct it in time. Now, be good and come with me." Her voice was soft, but something in it froze Alice's spine. She wanted to run, but her legs didn't move. The Queen, for she could be no one else, reached out and touched Alice's cheek with cool fingers. "Don't fret, my dear. You'll remember who you are soon enough." The world tilted. The roses began to pulse, their veins glowing faintly red. The ticking rose to a shrill crescendo. Then everything went white. When Alice opened her eyes again, the sky had turned a pale, humming grey. She lay in the rose garden, though the roses were wilted now, their white petals curled and stiff, their red veins dried like cracks in porcelain. A cold wind moved through the air, dry and sharp, smelling faintly of iron. She sat up slowly. Her head ached. Her hand shook. The memory of the Queen's touch lingered on her skin, cool and faintly electric. She didn't know how long she'd been asleep, or if she'd ever really woken up. From beyond the garden wall came the soft shuffle of footsteps. A shadow leaned close to the gate, long ears, pale hair, twitching hands. The rabbit. He pushed the gate open just enough for her to see one red eye peering through. "You shouldn't have run off," he whispered. "She doesn't like that." Alice's throat felt dry. Who doesn't? The Queen, of course. He slipped fully into view now. His coat buttoned all the way up to his throat, collar stiff and spotless. The keys on his belt jingled faintly as he approached, each with a small tag etched in tiny handwriting. She noticed one bore her own name. "What are those for?" she asked. He hesitated. "Doors." A pause, then almost guiltily. "And sometimes locks." He smiled too wide. "Come, she's waiting for you." They walked down a narrow path of pale stone. The trees leaned overhead like cathedral arches, their bark streaked white and grey, their leaves whispering in a language Alice almost understood. Somewhere far away, A bell rang 3 times. "What's that?" she asked. "Call to order," the rabbit said quickly. "When the Queen calls, everyone attends. You too. Order," she repeated. The word tasted strange, heavy. "What happens if I don't?" He stopped walking. The wind died. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. "Correction," he said softly. Then he smiled again, and the moment passed. The Queen's Hall stood at the heart of Wonderland, or perhaps at its edge. It was difficult to tell. The building seemed to shimmer and fold, its walls bending like light through water. As they entered, Alice realised the walls were lined with mirrors, dozens of them, stretching floor to ceiling, reflecting her image back and forth until it multiplied into infinity. Each reflection moved a fraction slower than the real her. Some didn't move at all. At the far end, on a throne carved from glass and bone, sat the Queen. Her gown gleamed white, a perfect contrast to her crimson gloves. A crown of silver wires adorned her head, each tip glowing faintly like a filament. "Ah," she said, her voice both warm and cold. "The wayward one returns." Alice bowed instinctively, unsure why. "I didn't mean to wander." "You always say that." The Queen's smile was patient. "And yet you always do." "I don't remember." The Queen's eyes softened with something that might have been pity. "That's precisely the problem, isn't it?" She gestured to the rabbit. "Leave us." He hesitated, then bowed and backed out of the hall. The doors closed behind him with a sound that was far too solid for wood, more like metal clicking shut. "Come closer," said the Queen. Alice obeyed. When she reached the foot of the throne, the Queen leaned forward and cupped her chin in one gloved hand. The glove was smooth, cold. "You've been drinking his tea again." Alice flinched. "The Hatters?" The Queen nodded slowly. "That man will rot your mind with his riddles and tinctures. You were doing so well before." "I don't remember drinking before." The Queen's grip tightened, though her expression never changed. "Of course you don't. That's what he wants." Alice tried to pull away, but the Queen's hand didn't move. "Why do I feel like I've been here before?" The Queen's smile thinned. "Because you have, many times." Something inside Alice twisted. "I don't understand." "You will," the Queen said gently. "You always do. Eventually." She released her chin and rose from the throne. Her gown rippled faintly as she moved, the fabric whispering like paper. "Follow me." They passed through a side corridor, lined with closed doors. Each door bore a number, carved in white enamel. Some glowed faintly, others flickered as though lit by hidden lights behind them. "Where do these lead?" Alice asked. "Different rooms for different guests," the Queen replied, each one tailored to the needs of the occupant. As they walked, Alice thought she heard murmurs behind the doors. Laughter, sobbing, humming. Once, she saw fingers slide through a crack beneath one, pale and trembling, before vanishing again. Her chest tightened. "Who are they?" she whispered. The Queen didn't answer. They stopped before a large mirror at the end of the corridor. Its surface was fogged, but faintly luminous. Alice could just make out her own reflection, pale skin, tangled hair, blue eyes rimmed with dark circles. "Look," said the Queen. Alice did. The mirror's fog thinned, and another figure appeared beside her reflection. The Hatter. He looked tired, older, his hat missing. In his hands was a cup of tea, steaming faintly. "She's improving," he murmured, though his voice came from inside the glass. "She's remembering faster this time." Alice gasped. "What?" The Queen placed a hand on her shoulder, firm and gentle. "You see, even now, the world bends toward healing. You mustn't resist it. I don't understand what this is." The Queen's voice hardened. "It is correction, nothing more." She snapped her fingers. The mirror flared white, and when the light faded, the Hatter was gone. Only Alice remained, though her reflection now wore a white gown instead of her blue dress. Her throat closed. "That's not me." The Queen tilted her head. "Are you sure?" A sharp sound cut through the silence, a flat, steady tone. For a split second, the corridor flickered. The mirror dissolved into a window. The throne room became a long, sterile hallway. The Queen's gown looked like pressed fabric, her crown like a cap. Then the image was gone. Alice stumbled back, gasping. What was that? The Queen's eyes flicked with irritation. A lapse. Ignore it. But Alice couldn't. The image clung to her mind. White walls, cold lights, the faint hum she'd heard beneath everything since she'd arrived. You saw nothing. The Queen's tone cut sharp as glass. Do you wish to go to correction? Alice froze. No. Then you will forget it. The Queen turned away, her voice smoothing again. Return to your quarters. The rabbit will escort you. The doors at the end of the corridor opened, and he stood there, waiting, eyes darting nervously. As Alice followed him out, she glanced back once. The Queen was standing before the mirror, her hand pressed against its surface, and for the briefest moment, Alice saw her reflection inside, a woman in a white uniform, her face blurred, her eyes soft and tired. Then the door shut. The rabbit led her through the forest again, though the trees looked thinner now, their trunks streaked with grey. The sky above was fading to a colourless dusk. Do you remember? He asked quietly. Alice blinked. Remember what? He didn't answer. His hand shook as he unlocked another gate, this one smaller, its bars rusted and streaked white. She stepped through and found herself back in a room she didn't recognise. It was square, plain, with smooth white walls. There was a bed, a small table, a window she couldn't see through, and on the table, a cup of tea, steaming faintly. She turned to ask the rabbit something, but he was gone. The door had vanished too. Her pulse quickened. Hello? No answer. She walked to the table and stared at the cup. Its scent was familiar. Lavender, sweetness, and something else. Something faintly metallic. Her fingers trembled as she reached for it. Then a voice came softly from somewhere above, warm, calm, and oddly familiar. "Be still, dear. Everything's all right. Just a little more time, and you'll remember everything." Alice froze. "Who's there?" The voice chuckled, quiet and patient. "Drink your tea, Alice. The Queen knows best." She looked up, but saw only smooth white ceiling. The ticking had returned, steady and rhythmic. Her hand trembled, the cup hovering inches from her lips. "I don't want to forget," she whispered. The voice sighed. "They all say that." The room dimmed. The tea's steam swirled upward, forming faint shapes, faces, flowers, spinning clocks, until the air shimmered and folded in on itself. When she blinked again, she was back in the garden of clocks. The world was whole once more, as if nothing had ever happened. Only this time, every clock was perfectly still. The world around her was falling apart. The white walls of the Red Queen's throne room rippled like fabric caught in the wind, seams of crimson light splitting between each brick. The chessboard floor lifted, squares rising and sinking like waves, and the air smelled suddenly of antiseptic instead of roses. Alice stood in the centre of it all, her breath quick and shallow. The Red Queen watched her from her high seat, hands folded neatly on her lap, her smile unnervingly calm. "Do you see it now?" the Queen asked softly. "Do you understand what happens to those who disobey?" The words should have been a threat, but they sounded almost like pity. Alice shook her head. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted to go home." The Queen's head tilted. "Home," she repeated, as if the word was unfamiliar. "And where is that, my dear?" Alice's lips parted, but no sound came. Images flickered at the edges of her mind. A bedroom window, rain against glass, a voice calling her name. But each time she tried to hold on to them, the sound of ticking drowned them out. Somewhere far away, a clock was keeping time. The Queen rose gracefully, descending the steps of her dais. The light caught the hem of her gown, and Alice saw that it wasn't truly red at all. It was white, white streaked with dark stains that seemed to bloom as she walked. The air hummed with a low, electric buzz. "Come now," the Queen said. "We mustn't be late." "Late for what?" Alice whispered. "For your treatment, of course." The words struck her like ice. Treatment. The syllables didn't fit in Wonderland. They didn't belong among teacups and painted roses. They belonged somewhere else, somewhere colder, where rooms smelled of bleach and the walls hummed with machines. Alice took a step back, shaking her head. "No, no, you're not real." The Queen smiled kindly. "None of us are, my dear." The walls of the throne room peeled back like paper, revealing another layer beneath. The grand marble arches dissolved into dull, white plaster. The stained glass windows became rectangular panes barred with metal. The crimson banners melted into hanging curtains, stiff and sterile. The Queen's crown flickered, and in its place was a cap of starched white cloth. "No," Alice whispered. Her voice trembled. "You're—" The Queen's eyes softened. "Yes," she said quietly. "I am." The illusion fought to hold itself together. The chessboard tiles became the floor of a hallway, and beyond the Queen, Alice could see figures moving, faceless attendants in pale uniforms, their features blurred as if seen through tears. One of them carried a tray, another wheeled a cart of gleaming instruments. Somewhere, a voice called her name again, clear this time. "Alice." She turned toward the sound. It was the Hatter, or what was left of him. His mismatched clothes were gone, replaced by a threadbare jacket. His hat had become a bandage, wrapped too tightly around his head. He smiled weakly at her through the haze. "You shouldn't have come back," he murmured. "She doesn't like it when we remember." "I don't understand," Alice said. "Remember what?" "That this isn't a kingdom," he said, his voice trembling. "It's a ward." The light above them flickered, and the air snapped. When Alice turned again, the Queen was standing very close, too close. Her perfume had changed, no longer roses, but alcohol and soap. Her gloved hands were clasped in front of her, but the gloves were latex now, thin and trembling slightly. "Come along, Alice," she said gently. "You've had another episode." Alice's mouth went dry. "Another episode?" "Yes," the Queen, the nurse, said, her voice both distant and intimate. "You've been in your Wonderland again." Alice shook her head violently. "No, Wonderland's real. It's where I'm from. You're the one who's—" The world convulsed. The walls snapped shut, the colours draining from everything. Wonderland's sky turned white, so bright it hurt to look at. The Mad Hatter's shape faded into smoke. The ticking that had haunted her from the start now became a steady, mechanical beep, beep, beep. And when the light dimmed again, she was sitting in a chair. The chair was metal. Her wrists were strapped down. The Red Queen, no, the nurse, stood before her, clipboard in hand. Her name badge gleamed in the fluorescent light. R. Quinn, head nurse. The red letters caught Alice's eye like a drop of blood on snow. Alice's voice was barely a whisper. "You're her." The nurse looked up, expression serene. "Who, dear?" "The Red Queen." For a moment, the nurse said nothing. Then she smiled faintly, as though indulging a child's fantasy. "You've been very imaginative today." Alice blinked rapidly. The room felt wrong. Too white, too still, no colour, no laughter, no humming flowers or twisting corridors, just white walls and the faint hum of electricity. And yet, when she looked at the nurse's shadow, it stretched long across the floor, longer than it should have. The edges fluttered like torn paper, and for a heartbeat, Alice thought she saw a crown there. The nurse noticed her staring and gently placed a hand on Alice's shoulder. "You're safe now. Do you understand? There's no Wonderland. Alice's mouth trembled. Then why can I still hear it? The nurse froze. Hear what, dear? The ticking. The room went silent. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then softly, from the hallway outside, the sound began again, steady, rhythmic, impossible to place. Not a clock, not a monitor, not footsteps, just a ticking. The nurse's face paled. That's impossible, she murmured under her breath. Alice began to smile. I think, she whispered, it's time for tea. Hours later, or perhaps minutes, time had lost all meaning. The ward lights dimmed to a soft, artificial night. The halls were quiet. The nurse sat at her desk, writing her final notes. Patient 42A. Name, Alice Liddell. Condition, persistent delusional disorder. Subject maintains the existence of a wonderland. Treatment, ongoing observation. Prognosis remains uncertain. She signed her name neatly at the bottom. Regina Quinn, RN. Then she paused, listening. Somewhere, faintly, a sound echoed through the halls. Tick, 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 tick. She set her pen down and turned toward the door. The shadows along the wall trembled, shifting like something alive. And for a fleeting instant, before she could blink it away, the reflection in the window showed a red crown sitting on her head. Her breath caught. Off with her head, a voice whispered behind her. The lights went out.